Okay, welcome everyone. I'm really excited tonight. It's funny how I meet people. Sometimes I'll interview someone, they'll recommend someone else. David Nevue is actually someone that's been around for quite a while, has over 17 albums, has 1.8 billion. Let me see, repeat that 1.8 billion spins on Pandora Radio. Just phenomenal. And was actually a poet in his childhood, so he actually almost had a career maybe in writing, and actually has some stories that he's wrapped music around. He's got a wonderful collection. We won't actually play a lot of his stuff in full tonight because I want to cover a little bit of many of his albums, but I was quite pleased to find out that he was interested in interviewing, and thank you very much. So, David, how are you tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm ready to go. I'm all pumped up. I got my chocolate here, which is that's my gives my superpower pills here, right?
I love it. I love it. You know, what I especially love about you reading, going through your music is that, first of all, you're religiously inspired. So a lot of your music is very beautiful in that regard too. But also, you clearly have shared with us your emotional development and journey over time. And I think we all can relate to that. I mean, there's good times, there's bad times, there's times when you feel like you're stuck in the mud. There's times when everything seems to go wrong, and there's times of pure joy and happiness, and times when you bring children into the world, and fatherhood's a joy in itself, and you've dedicated some albums to two of your children. Just beautiful, beautiful things. So I first want to congratulate you for that. Also, you've got a wonderful web presence. So I want to show people. I'm just going to share the screen for a minute here. So you can see, first of all, uh, there is the bio on him. And here's the quick summary. And by the way, it's well worth clicking into the full biography because it goes on for pages and it's wonderful. All the deep detail you get into it. I really enjoyed reading it. But there's also, and this is wonderful, you have a place on your site where people can listen to complete songs in their entirety without paying Spotify or whatever. So there's a wonderful collection of songs here that I encourage people to listen to. If we have time, we'll go through a couple of them, but we're going to actually also pick out samples. So what I love about this too is that you have in each of your pages that are dedicated to an album, you have, I'm using the word album, you have samples of all these songs, and we're going to play some of them. And I think that's going to be a wonderful treat tonight. But I also wanted to mention before I get too much further that I was really impressed that Lang Lang has picked up one of your pieces. It must be a real thrill to have someone listen to your music and decide to play it. So you had done an arrangement of Greensleeves that he loved, and I understand you even talked to him about it.
Yeah, well, it was over Twitter. I DM'd him
Yeah.
and I DM'd Lang Lang and I said, I see that you recorded my arrangement of Greensleeves. I said, I'm David Nevue, and I just asked him why he picked me because I was completely stunned by that.
Yeah.
And what he told me was that his people had provided him a whole bunch of versions, and he said he liked mine best. It spoke to him, and so that was the one that he chose to do.
I love
So
it.
that's pretty incredible.
I also wish I'd met you years ago because you also dedicated yourself to uh, you spent a lot of time helping other people with books and information on how to make it in the music business. And obviously you figured out how to do that, but that's a wonderful thing. So I appreciate that you did that. So thank you for that. So let's talk about the Tower. This I believe is your first is that true? Is your first album? And this is one where your poetry came through.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, at this point in time, I did not have any idea or clue. I mean, I wasn't pursuing a career in music. I loved writing. Creative writing was my thing. Writing poetry, that was kind of my artistic expression.
Uh-huh.
Um, and this was in 1984, actually, when I first started to compose music.
Hmm.
And I was inspired by George Winston, who my
Oh
college
God.
roommate
Yeah.
was a yeah, my college roommate was a huge fan of his, and so he was
Yeah.
playing it all the time, and I'm like, "What is this? I've never heard anything like it." And um, so I started just noodling around with at the piano, and I was writing poetry at that time. It was my main thing, and I just decided I had this idea for a short story, um, and I thought, I'm going to write some music and put it with this short story. And so I basically had this little short story with kind of 11 chapters, and I wrote a piece like a soundtrack to each chapter, and that ended up becoming this album.
That's wonderful. Should we play the tower, or which piece should we give people?
You know what? Let's play Prelude, because Prelude, no, no, not Prelude. I'm sorry, the Princess.
Okay, yeah.
That's the first song that I ever performed live, and it was in college. It was my first time playing as a solo pianist, and there was a college-wide talent show,
Oh,
and I
wow.
played that piece. And so this was like the first performance was this song.
Nice. Okay, this is the princess, or at least a sample of it. Boy, they just when they grab us, they shut it off.
Yeah.
So tell me how did you get into music as a kid? I mean, was music a big part of your life? Was your family all musical?
No, not even close.
Really? Oh,
Oh
interesting.
no, I think, well, from what I understand, my grandfather really was that totally skipped a generation. Neither of my
Ah,
parents were musical at
uh-huh.
all. I grew up, um, honestly, I grew up listening to my mom's records, which was mostly Elvis and the Beach Boys and Paul
Ah,
Anka.
hmm.
And then there was this TV show that kind of had a rerun in the early 70s called The Monkees.
Yes.
And as an impressionable 6, 7 year old at that time, I loved that show, and that I wanted to be a musician.
Uh-huh.
It looked like such great fun, and I started. I kind of started noodling around. My grandmother had a piano, and I just sit down at the piano and mess around, and I'd pick up things from television or radio, and I kind of start playing with it. Uh, very simple, but that was really where it all started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. And how did the path to musicianship work for you? Did you right out of college become a musician, or how did that all work?
And it's just kind of this long, weird path. I mean,
Yeah.
I was always in music at school,
Hmm.
in choir. I mean,
Yeah.
that's most of my sight reading, which I don't really do because I don't really read music, but
Yeah.
everything I know is from my uh, elementary school years and high school reading
Hmm.
music for choir.
Yeah.
So I did that. I really wanted to, as I was playing, messing around, on the piano a little bit. I had dreams of being a rock star and all that stuff, but I never took it seriously. I had 3 years of lessons with three different teachers.
Mm.
I never really took to it. And then I got in college and heard Winston's music, and that was kind of what set the spark. And I'm like, I like this, and I think I might be able to do something like this.
That's great. Well, let's
Yeah.
listen to this next album. This is While the Trees Sleep. You want to give us a little background on that one?
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like While the Trees Sleep really kind of still captures my poetic side.
Yeah.
I was still writing a little bit at this point in time, but um, I wanted to create an album of imagery of the winter and walking in the woods and having time, being alone in the woods and just enjoying that peace and quiet. And so for
Mm.
me, all the pieces on this album were really me taking these mental pictures of winter and walking in the woods and putting them to music.
By the way, I think you told me, is this also a photo from your roommate in college?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your roommate in
Um,
college, being great photographers, photography is great. This is a great capture of, yeah.
oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, this was a random photo. We were out in around the Klamath Falls area, and it was winter time, and I wanted something with the beech trees that we had there.
Wonderful.
Um, so yeah.
So which one should we play here? Should we play the title track or Walking with Giants? What would you like?
Um, I would say play While the Trees Sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this album is While the Trees Sleep was kind of the album where I found my sound.
Mm,
The
hmm.
the first one, The Tower, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was just composing and writing pieces, and it's
Yeah.
really dramatic and I like it, but I feel like the second album I kind of started to sound like David Nevue.
Interesting. Now, who else did you like besides George Winston? Because I do hear some George in there, but I hear some other things too.
Well, really, I mean, back then, I mean, all I listened to in terms of piano was George Winston. I mean, I
Really?
always loved Chopin and,
Yeah.
Debussy's work. I mean, they were I guess, part of it kind of way in the background. But for
Yeah.
me, most of my inspiration was actually more bands like Kansas or Supertramp,
Ah, interesting.
Jethro Tull or
Yeah.
Rush.
Hmm.
Kate Bush, I just loved her music in high school and going into college. I mean, and Pink Floyd. I mean, these bands I think more inspired me a lot more musically between them and then George Winston
Yeah.
was
Now,
a
is it
lot
true that
had
you
more.
ended up majoring in marketing at college? Uh, Is
No,
that
I
true?
actually majored in communication arts.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have been a theater major because that was my whole thing was theater, but they didn't
Yeah.
have a theater major, so all my theater credits went to communication arts, so I was a communication arts major.
Now, you know what's interesting about you? You describe yourself at one point as being kind of an introvert, right?
Totally.
And
I'm
yet,
completely.
and yet you did theater, and actually that's not uncommon. I remember reading that some other people are actually technically in personal life very shy would do things on stage and have. So you somehow broke through that barrier and got comfortable on stage. How did you do that? Is there, what do you think? How do you think that happened?
I think when you go on stage, you're able to compartmentalize your
Hmm.
mind.
Yeah.
For one, and this is how I do concerts too. All my theater training, when I do live performances, that all comes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what it is, it's a one to many relationship instead of a
Yeah.
one to one relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
And one to one interaction, I really struggle with.
Hmm.
Small talk, keeping up conversations,
Right. Right.
looking people in the eyes. I'm just
Yes.
terrible at that stuff.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
it's one to many, I have no problem at all. I think my father was a street preacher and a pastor, so I kind of think I got some of that from him, the ability to stand in front of a group of people and not be bothered at all by it.
I didn't catch the expression. You said street preacher? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is that? What's a street preacher?
Well, my dad was a guy who went out on the streets of Portland and he opened his Bible and just started preaching to
Oh
whoever
my
was
God,
around.
really? So he was very
Yeah,
seriously, yeah, yeah.
yes.
So
He
that
was
explains,
that.
yeah.
He went to Africa. He was an evangelist there and
Wow,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Well, you're really moved by your religious commitment too. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
yeah, I mean, I look at what I do as I just feel like it's a gift. I
Hmm.
don't know how else to explain it. It's just
Yeah,
something that's in me.
yeah,
People will sometimes say, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's just what I do."
yeah.
Uh, so I feel I feel the responsibility. I feel the desire to take this
Hmm.
gift that I've been given and to use it to praise God and to take all of this, you know, and just to use it in a positive way to encourage other
Yeah,
people, to lift them up, to um, and I've always felt that I've always felt that the Holy Spirit works through my music in some way that I don't quite understand, but I just really want for people to draw near to it. And I'm hoping that they'll sense and feel the grace and peace of Christ in it.
yeah.
And so it's a big part of what I do. I mean, it's just for me, my music is it's a response to the gift that I've been given, and I just want to give it back and
It's
do
wonderful.
do a
I
good
want to
job
ask
with
you,
it.
did you actually spend some years as a church pianist? I actually spent 4 years as a church pianist and learned a lot about how to sight read and stuff like that. But, yeah,
Not in the traditional sense like what you're saying,
yeah.
but I did play on the worship team for a long time, and in fact, at my most recent church that I was a part of for 20 years, I was on the worship team and actually led worship.
Oh, okay. And you
So
also, I know, did concerts at churches in various places
yes,
around the country and
yeah,
things like that. Yeah,
oh
excellent.
yeah, concerts at churches, concerts in people's homes, and then venues like piano galleries and such.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's talk about this next one, which is based on your wife having a dream about a face-to-face meeting with Christ
yeah.
called The Last Waking Moment. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, she just had this very lucid dream, and it's hard to go into because it's just I don't want to get tell this long story when we have so much to cover, but
Yeah.
um, it was something that was very real to her, and she felt that it was a real event happening. It was like a
Hmm.
vision.
Yeah.
And so she woke up and she told me all about it, and I found it so inspiring. I wanted to write an album based on it. So I basically told the story through the music, much like I did with The Tower, only in this case, I told the story through the music of my wife's dream.
Yeah. That's
So on the
fascinating.
liner notes of the album, the jacket, and then also on my website, there's just kind of this little write-up of each song and kind of going through the dream she
Yeah.
had.
Should we play the title track?
Yeah, let's play. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. You have great technique on the piano. Did you only have 3 years of training, or did you do more of that? Are you all self-taught there, or how'd that work
Yeah,
out?
I'm self-taught.
Wow. You
I
seem to
don't
be.
really I don't really count the years that I took lessons because
Yeah.
it was so random.
Uh-huh.
Um, my best teacher was my first teacher, I think, in terms of my being engaged. I only had her for 3 months before I moved away, and then I had another teacher that I was with her for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and she felt strongly that I needed to master the key of C before I even went to the key of G. So for a year, everything she taught me was in the key of C, and I guess I never mastered it because I never made it to the key of G. And this was all when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old. And
Yeah.
then by the time I was 14, I had my third teacher. She was a good teacher too, but by that time I was like interested in football and girls and I didn't want to practice. So
Really interesting.
yeah, yeah,
By the way, I heard that Chopin would actually start people in the key of B because he felt that was more naturally fitting to the physiology of the hand, with the thumb playing the white keys and the other fingers playing the black keys. That's kind of
I can
interesting.
see that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, let's talk about this is a very intimate album. This is called The Vigil, and
yeah.
let's talk a bit about that.
Well, it's the whole album represents a night of prayer.
Mm,
And it begins at midnight and it ends at sunrise. And so again, it's like this story, and inside there's kind of this poetic prose, kind of talks about the passage of the night,
mm,
where I'm at the piano, I'm in prayer, and reading through the Psalms and just crying out to God and seeking after the Lord, which I feel like really represents my music and what I do. This
yeah.
album, by the way, The Vigil, is my personal favorite, I think, of all of my work, except for probably my most recent.
Mm,
But I love this album. It has kind of a darker quality. I love the tone of it. I love the sound of the recording.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it's really an album that was inspired by prayer and inspired by a sleepless night at the piano.
Oh, wow.
And that's where the title track actually came from, was just sitting at the piano with my Bible open to the Psalms and reading and praying and just letting just playing whatever
Yeah.
came to mind.
Now, did you actually go through a full night of this? So this was a representation of a real event where you were up all night with this struggle, this prayer struggle, or is it more of
Yes,
a
although
metaphoric
yes,
thing?
and
Yeah.
that's where the title track came from, and that's kind
Yeah.
of where the other pieces were written, later, not that night
Yeah.
specifically, but that was where I got the idea. I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to basically do a full expression of this night.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have these kind of dark nights of the soul, we have these
Of
nights where
course.
just we call out to God and we just feel like, oh Lord, have mercy, hear my prayer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what this album represents to me.
There are two snippets I'd like to do here, The Vigil and also A Midnight Rain. A
Okay.
Midnight Rain. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And then A Midnight Rain. And by the way, do you is there sheet music on these? Do you codify them in some
Yeah,
way? Yeah.
every song on my website, sheet music is available.
No kidding. And how did you
Yeah.
do that?
Well, many years, but I actually hire others to do the
Yeah.
transcription.
Yeah.
And I've been using somebody who's an artist friend of mine, and she's been doing my work for probably 15 years now, if not
Mm.
more. And we've gone back and she's now transcribed all of my work, so it all looks the same and has
Wow.
the same
Oh,
thing.
that's great. Yeah, I actually found a group in England that I can send a tape to or a recording to, and they'll send it back to me in 3 days. But I'm sure there's other
Yeah.
tools out there. But that's it's wonderful. It's great that you have. So if anyone wants to play any of this stuff, they could just buy a sheet music online. That's
Yep.
wonderful. That's
Yeah, the
great.
vigil, I just want to say about the vigil, that piece, both of those songs I love, and I love playing. And Midnight Rain is so much fun to play.
Mm.
The vigil is a personal favorite, and it is the song that I open almost every concert with.
Ah,
And I do that in part because I know the song so well that even if I feel nerves or nervous for any reason, it gives me a chance to just kind of ease into the performance because it's
yes.
like a piece I can play that I'm not worried about because even
Right.
because it's just I played it 10 bajillion times.
The fact that you have so many pieces, I imagine, and but you, like me, don't like to sight read. Do you do it all from memory, or do you actually still put some music in front of sheet music in front of you when you play?
No, it's from memory when I do concerts.
It is, yeah. That's how I am too. I think that's amazing. That's great. Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to your next album. This is Postcards from Germany, and like you, I have to confess, when I think of Germany, I've not been there, but I think of Germany as probably being a dark industrial country.
Yeah,
But of course, when you think about it, the Disney uh, castle is based on a German castle somewhere. So, and you discover that
it's
Germany is
fun.
actually quite beautiful, like a fairy tale land. And
It
so,
really is. I mean, there's
yeah,
literally a castle on every hill.
really.
As you drive it, it's
Mm,
incredible. And if you do like
wow.
a little drive up and down the Rhine River, it's just castle, 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 castle. It's it's really amazing, and it's a beautiful country. Um, and I didn't go there with any. I mean, my wife and I went there. This was 1999, I think we went.
Mm, yeah,
We were invited by some friends who were stationed there to go, and so we went to Bavaria and we spent about a week and a half driving around, just exploring. And I did not go there with any idea of doing music,
yeah,
but I came back and I was just so inspired by all of these adventures and places and people and events. And so I couldn't help but to take some of those, my favorite memories, and basically put them to music. And I
that's
wanted to
wonderful.
remember. So for me, the postcards aspect is, for me, this each song is like a postcard of a place or a memory or some things that I always remember it. A little postcard from Germany.
I love that concept. I love that
Yeah.
concept. So, should we play the title track, or is there any favorite that you have here? Oh, I
Um,
think Big Snow in Salzburg you said you liked, right? Is that one we should
Yeah,
play?
Big Snow in Salzburg is a really popular one.
Hmm.
That's a piece that I have. It seems like piano students really gravitate toward that one, and a lot of students will play that song.
Hmm. Okay, let's play that.
So yeah.
I noticed you have one called The Amazing Accordion. Was there a story behind that? You saw some
Oh
guy
yeah,
doing
there's a
amazing
great story.
things?
That's kind of my big encore piece that I do at the end of shows.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's we were in downtown Munich, and this was in November.
Hmm.
It's like freezing cold, like 15 degrees outside. And there was this musician doing a one-man band kind of thing with his accordion,
Hmm.
and it was incredible. And there's a big long story behind it, kind of has this big nice build up, but he was just this wild man, long hair. He had his accordion all painted crazy colors, and it was just drawing in a crowd, and it was just a really amazing thing to watch. And I walked away from that hearing him play with this oompa music in my head that just wouldn't go away.
Huh.
Um, Even days later, when I got home, I just sat down at the piano and I started messing around with it because I kind of felt like I need to get this oompa music out of my head. And so I sat at the piano and I ended up writing this piece, which uh, kind of was accidental, and it doesn't sound like really any of my other pieces, but that's part of what makes it special.
Huh. Maybe we should play a little of that too. I wasn't
Go
counting on
for
that.
it.
That sounds
Go
like,
for it.
yeah, let's go back and do that.
It's a fun piece. It usually brings down the house when I play in concert.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked. Now we do
Uh,
have some composers in the group, so I do want to ask you. We talked about this earlier in a pre-interview, talking about how you compose, and like me, sometimes I think you find that if you just do it all at the piano, you get kind of stuck in your own piano routines that you do. So you have an idea, you may have some things on the piano, but you'll walk away, have an idea, and develop it kind of in your head, and then go
yes.
back and figure out how to do it. So you almost kind of learn a new technique on the piano almost with every song that you invent, kind of, you come up with a new way of playing something. So that's, I think,
Yeah.
a clever way to do it. Did you want to add anything to that? I think I kind of
Oh
paraphrased.
no, I think you nailed it. I mean, pretty
Yeah.
much when I'm at the piano, I'm always going to be in the box. I'm going to be the way that I play and the progressions that I play and the melodies that I play are going to kind of default toward my leanings, right?
Yes.
The
Yeah.
way I play and so um, I find that if I stay in the box at the piano, that I'll always tend toward certain progressions or keys or riffs or whatever. And so what I have to do is I have to leave the box. And so I'll start writing a piece, but then I'll go for a walk and I'll walk away and I'll start playing it in my mind. And in my
Mm.
mind, I have a lot more freedom because I'm not worried about my hands.
Yes.
So I'll hear a piece in my head and I'll start composing and trying different changes or different little melodic twists in my brain. And then I was like, oh, I like that. And then I'll come back to the piano and find that.
Mm.
It's like I'll start at the piano, then walk away and kind of compose mentally, and then come back and find what I'm hearing in my head.
Yeah.
And that works pretty well for me.
Now, this next album is actually a compilation of your prior albums. And how did you go about even deciding what to include in it? Do you go for the most popular, the pieces that were the most popular, the ones that are your favorites, or how did you go about doing that?
Well, the first one, Whisperings there, I've got three compilation albums. I did one for every 10 years.
Yeah.
And this was the first one, and I actually did a poll of my my newsletter followers
Mm.
and asked them what their favorite songs were from my first four albums. And
Yeah.
so I kind of gathered that together, and I also took data from what was happening with my music at the time online, just kind of what seemed. There wasn't a lot in terms of was not a lot of feedback at that time because there wasn't much going on online at that time in terms of music other than
Yeah.
like e3.com.
Right.
But a lot of it was feedback from playing concerts and playing the piano and seeing what people, gravitated toward. And
Hmm.
then I basically sent out a survey. And the songs, to everybody that was following me, and the songs that did well in the survey, that's kind of how I picked them for that
Yeah.
first album.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now I noticed you also have some unreleased tracks. Are any of
too.
them, are they something we could find in here?
Yeah, there's one called The Night. They're both at the end. Oh, well, there's an arrangement of I Wander as I Wander. I Wonder as I Wander.
Uh-huh.
That was unreleased. And then there's a piece called The Night Season at the end, and that
At
was
the end.
unreleased.
Let's play
The night,
those. Yeah.
yeah, I Wander as I Wander was just a piece that I wanted to do, and I hadn't at this point done a Christmas album. And I just really liked it, and I did this kind of nice improvisation around it. And then the Night Season was a piece that was left over from the Vigil. It was a song that I didn't put on the Vigil because
Mm,
I felt like the album was too long, and I felt like it didn't wasn't additive to that album.
yeah.
And so I kind of kicked it forward onto this, and the Night Season, and it's so funny because the two previously unreleased tracks, I Wander as I Wander and the Night Season, are kind of become two of the most streamed tracks on this album.
Oh, no kidding.
It's so funny. It's just the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Well, let's play them. That's great. I wonder as I wander. That's just beautiful. And then I'm going to play this too. No more tears. Yeah, that's one of your best downloads of all time. No more tears. So that's wonderful. Now,
Yeah.
do you ever like force yourself to sit down at the piano and write, or do you just have so much stuff coming out of you all the time that you have to
Oh,
contain it in some way? Or how's that work?
no, I go through waves.
Yeah.
I used to be a lot more prolific when I was younger,
Hmm.
and played a lot more. I'd come home from work or just my day, and sit at the piano. I kind of feel like as I've gotten older, it's become more difficult. And I think a lot of that is because, once you've written 100 songs, how do you write song number 101
Right,
and
right.
make sure
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like any of the other 100 songs that you wrote,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, when you first start, you have all this energy and you have all these ideas and you
Hmm.
compose these pieces. But then the more pieces you compose, it's like, okay, well, I want to do something different than what I've done
Yes.
before. And it becomes more and more difficult. And I found that as I've gotten older and, I think become, uh, at least at some part of my career, a little bit more cognizant, aware of not wanting to disappoint people and wanting to do
Hmm.
good work and do
Yeah.
something that interests people. You feel like in the early days, I felt no pressure,
Right,
right?
right.
No one knew
That's
who
the
I
irony of
was,
it.
right? It
Yes.
didn't
Yeah.
matter. It was a hobby.
Yeah.
Um, but as I, found myself, becoming more well known and having fans and other piano players playing my music, I became a little bit more aware of, man, I'm going to write something. I need to write something that matters. I need to write something that's
Yeah.
significant. I got to do something. I start writing like, no, that sounds like this piece. Oh, that's not, oh, I'm playing in this key change. I'm playing this, key signature
Well, I have
again.
to admit, at some point, maybe you've said everything you want to say.
Well, yeah, and I felt that for my last two albums. I felt that way.
We're going to
I
talk about
felt,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Let's talk
on
about that.
both
Yeah.
Winding Down and In the Soft Light of Grace. I kind of wondered if each of them was my last album. Like, am I done? I
Interesting.
I feel done. But
Yeah.
then 3 years later, and I in my last and In the Soft Light of Grace, I kind of felt the same way. I'm just like, I don't know, do I have this? And then just the last few weeks, suddenly I'm writing music again, and I'm inspired, and I've already written and recorded half an album of new music.
I love
Uh,
it.
so it
Yeah.
just comes in like it's like
Yes, like waves.
no
Yeah.
nothing, and then I'm dumped on, you know.
Yeah. Now, there are a couple of seminal moments in your life where amazing things happen. So one was the birth of your son,
Yep.
Nathan. And so we have this next album. I'm going to share this now, Sweet Dreams and Starlight. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, you cannot have children and not have them inspire your life and change your life and
Oh my God.
inspire music, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they change everything. I mean,
Hmm.
everything changes.
Hmm.
Your focus, what you're concerned about, um, and this album contains a lot of pieces that I wrote when Nathan was really small, and then when and then when Noel was born, when he was 3, Noel was born. Um, so a lot of the pieces I kind of view as like lullabies.
Hmm.
There's one called "Song for Noel" that I wrote for Noel. "The Gift" was a piece that I wrote for, in part for Nathan.
Hmm.
Um, but I people will say they'll ask me if it's my children's album, and I really think of it more as my father's album.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so it's a great album. It's peaceful. It's a good sleepy album. A lot of people play this for their their infants or their children to put them to sleep. This album
Ah,
is also my son's favorite, and the title track is my son's favorite song of mine, which I'm really happy about because
oh,
it's a great
excellent.
song.
Let's play that. Sweet Dreams and Starlight.
Yeah,
Great title, by the way.
thank you.
There's almost a meditative quality to it, the way it has that rhythmic pattern to it, and
Yep.
those wonderful
It's very
repeat notes.
hypnotic, and if you hear the,
Yeah.
I find it interesting the little snippets that Spotify chooses to use for
Oh, you
their.
don't have control of that.
No, well, I think I do. I think I do now, but in the
Okay.
early days you didn't, and
Yeah.
some people released, So it's like this part of the song that we heard is like near the end, the big buildup, you
Oh,
know.
okay.
And it starts out really peaceful, and it's got this sweet, sweet melody,
Yeah.
and it just builds into like starlight and the
Yes.
twinkling, and it's very
Yeah.
hypnotic, and it's one of my. I'm really proud of that composition. It's
That's
one of
great.
my
It's my
better
hope
ones.
that some people in this audience tonight will go back and listen to all of these, on Spotify. I do have a Spotify account. I just don't have it set up through my PC. Let's do the next album. This is now Overcome, and
Hmm.
this was in part because of your dad's passing. I
Yeah.
can relate to that because I just lost him in November. And but talk a little bit about it because it's not just sadness and sorrow. It's more than that. So tell us about that.
This is really, yeah, it's a lot of the music was being written. My dad was diagnosed with cancer,
Mm, mm.
and for 2 years he fought with it, and he got to a point where he couldn't eat anymore, and so it's like he pretty much starved to death.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's awful. Yeah,
and it was pretty awful. But my my father was a man of such faith, um, and all growing up, he and I really butted heads a lot.
oh sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and we had a lot of conflict, of course, but
Mhm.
my father was always, as a preacher, my father was the same man as a dad as he was a preacher, in both a good way and in the bad way. But
Mm,
in the good way, the faith that he professed, the faith in Christ that he professed, he believed at home too.
yeah.
And it was his whole life was serving Christ and serving the Lord, and wanting to share the gospel message.
Mm,
And so this album was really kind of not so much, it's not so much about the sorrow and the grief, although that's there, but it's about the process of passing through the grief
mm, mhm,
and perseverance
mm,
and being able to stand firm in your faith and trusting God even through the suffering.
mhm,
And then coming out the other side and just recognizing that God is sovereign in all things, and knowing my father is with the Lord, he's with Jesus, and then I'll see him again. And but this album is it's really dedicated to my father and to his faith, which he lived out in every aspect of his life. And really, he was an inspiration for me in that sense. I just don't think that I would, so much of the faith that I have, I got from my dad and
Yeah.
from his persistence with me.
Yeah.
And and so I'm grateful for him, glad that he was my dad.
That's wonderful. What a great legacy. Wow. Wow. We'll have to listen to the whole thing. Now, this is
Yeah.
one of your religious albums, Adoration. And we're not going to listen to these per se, but I'm going to say you had two albums out of the studio. You had Adoration and Revelation. And Revelation was the one that was more of the improvisational stuff that
Yeah.
maybe, yeah. So talk about that a little bit, would you?
Well, Adoration was the planned album. It was all hymn arrangements.
Yeah.
It's the first time that I did that.
Mm.
As I had done an arrangement of Be Thou My Vision, which appeared on my third album, The Last Waking Moment. But aside from that, I hadn't done any arrangements of hymns. And I wanted to take these beautiful, wonderful hymns that I grew up with that were so much a part of my life as
Mm.
a child, because it just felt like, at least the churches that I had been attending and going to, it just felt like the hymns were kind of disappearing.
Yeah.
Um, so I took my favorites and I started doing some arrangements of them. And the story behind Adoration and Revelation is they're kind of a pair because I went into the album to record Adoration, and there's a big long story behind that, which I won't get into. But um, what I did, because I was a worship leader at my church,
Mm.
and so what I would do is I would do a couple of takes of the hymns and work in the recording studio, and then I would relax and calm down and try, because I was trying to keep myself in this place of worship, right?
Mm.
I mean, when doing a song, an album of music that's intended for worship, I just feel the responsibility and the weight of just, I want it to be worshipful, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to the studio with an intent to worship and not to just record songs, but to worship the Lord and then have these recordings of the worship. And so what I would
Mm.
do is record the hymns, and then between takes, I would just sit at the piano and improvise on some of the worship choruses and praise songs that we would do at church.
Huh.
And what I found after, and this was, I wasn't doing it for a purpose to release an album, but after I got back home and I was listening through the takes, I
Mm.
had also recorded all the improvisational stuff that I did in the studio between takes. And after I listened through the album and listened through the improvisations, it just kind of struck me. So it's like, I've got 10 songs here. Like I've got, these could work.
Yeah.
And so I had like three or four hymns that I didn't finish in time for Adoration. And so I worked on those. I came back and did those, like A Mighty Fortress is Our God, and Praise the Lord, the God Almighty. And so I took some hymns and then I put those in with all these 10 improvisations that I did on modern worship music.
Mm. Mm.
And then there's two original pieces. One is called The Mystery and the Glory, which is one of the most beautiful, beautiful recordings. And it's completely just like, it's one take. It's just just like sitting at the piano. I was working on one of the choruses. I played the wrong chord. And then I just kept going. I just kept improvising. And so
I
that
love it.
piece is just like this moment
All
of
right, we have to play that
improvisation.
then. The Mystery and the Glory. Here it is.
Yeah.
That's great. It's really majestic the way those chords are coming through. That's very nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
Well, let's
thank
move
you.
on. This is your next one, which is called A Delicate Joy, and
Yeah.
this is about your another child of yours, right? Or is this Noelle? Or who's this?
This is Noelle. This is my daughter. She just
Yeah.
got married this last weekend.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Thank
right.
you.
Oh my God.
Um,
Mm,
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, A Delicate Joy and the next album, Open Sky, are
mm,
also kind of a pair
mm,
because while I was working on all the hymn arrangements for Adoration and then had Restoration or Adoration and then Revelation, the follow-up album, and then doing some coming back and doing some hymns for that album. Um, I had a period of about um, 4 years there between albums where I was just focused on recording the hymns and arranging the hymns,
mm.
but I was writing all this music.
At
And
the same
so,
time. Ah,
yeah, so
yeah.
this original music. So I had this huge storehouse of music,
Mm,
and it was all things that were inspired by family tours because the kids were little, we were homeschooling. And so I was out on tour on the road performing. I had my whole family with me.
wow. That's
So I
wonderful.
was writing these songs that were inspired by the precious time with my kids and by
Mm,
adventures that we had on the road. And I ended up taking the sweetest of the songs, the ones that I thought were the most just melodic, sweet pieces,
mm-hmm,
and that I felt like reflected joy and the joy of treasuring moments. And I
mm,
put those on A Delicate Joy. And then 2 years later, I released the next album, Open Sky, which was kind of more of the, I would say, more of the adventurous tracks, the songs that
mm.
were more like traveling songs.
Yeah.
Um, so they all kind of came out of the same pool, but inspired by this same very precious. This time of my life with my kids on the road was probably the best several years of my life. It was one of the
Wow.
best periods of,
Let's play Hand in Hand. I like that one.
yeah, thank you.
And by the way, I like them all, but I just happen to really like that one. And
I got
so
to
this
tell you
next
about
album,
that. I
yeah,
got to tell you about that song.
yeah,
Okay, that was a piece that I wrote for my daughter.
uh-huh,
When she was a little girl, I used to love to go roller skating with her. And my
mm,
daughter is not a super affectionate person. She never has been. I should, that sounds terrible, but she wasn't toward me. Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
one of the things I treasured about going roller skating with her is that we would go skating and then she would always want to hold my hand.
Oh, that's
And
sweet.
so we'd
Yeah,
go around and around, and it's like as she got older, every time we went roller skating and we had that couple skate with my daughter, I
yeah,
always wondered, is this the last time she's going to want to do this, right? Because
yeah,
she's growing
yeah,
up. Okay,
yeah.
so I wrote this song for her, just reflecting on that time, just holding her hand and going skating around the roller skating and just treasuring that moment.
Mm,
So this last weekend she got married,
mm-hmm,
and I'm the father of the bride. I'm walking her down the aisle, gonna walk her down the aisle, and I'm waiting for the bridal march to start.
mm.
Right, I'm there, and then this piano music starts playing. I'm like, what is going on? And it was this piece, Hand in Hand.
Oh, no kidding.
And my daughter turns to me in beautiful in her wedding gown as I'm
Mm.
sitting there with the all the people waiting to go down the aisle. And she turns to me and she says, Pop, will you hold my hand? I'm getting emotional.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
so I got to walk down the aisle to give my daughter away to this wonderful man to this song Hand in Hand, which I wrote for her. It
That's
was like
beautiful.
full circle, and it was just this beautiful moment. I had no idea this was happening. Everybody knew it was happening but me. But it was a wonderful surprise, and it was a moment that I'll never forget. And I just
That's
feel like it's just
wonderful.
a real capstone on our relationship. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Okay, let me share the screen so people can't see me crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have Open Sky, we talked about that. Now we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip ahead and
Okay.
go to this is winding down now. This is a whole nother time in your life where things are, as you say, winding down. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, well, I was, boy, I was at this point in time, I was continuing to tour, but I didn't have my family with me anymore.
Hmm.
So I was on the road a lot. I was alone. Um, and frankly, I was pretty stressed out. I was having a lot of physical problems, namely vertigo.
Oh,
I was having a
yeah.
lot of pain in my hands and feet. And so it's like, I never knew from day to day, it's like, am I going to get car sick because of the vertigo?
Oh, wow.
And then go to the show. And then sometimes even playing the piano, I would get like seasick. I
Hmm.
would feel like, it was just really bad. And
Wow.
so I was going through this period of time that was really hard. And so what I did was I stopped performing,
Hmm.
and when I stopped performing, it was like my mind was freed up
Hmm.
to just write and compose. And I
Hmm.
sat down and I composed this album in a flurry of inspiration in a 6 week period. And um, I really, um, I really stretched myself with this album, and I wanted to write again music unlike anything that I had written before. And
Ah.
so I was really focused on the nitty gritty, trying to make this album like my best, most interesting work.
Hmm.
Um, and it turned out really, really well. I'm super, super proud of it. It got the best review I ever got as a composer came
Wow.
from that album.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, and and so yeah, I had a reviewer said, "Winding Down is David Nevue's Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club
Oh,
Band.
really?
It's his Mona Lisa. It's his town, and he was comparing me to all these great works. I'm like, wow.
That's great.
So
And you
I'm
didn't
gonna.
have to do it on acid. You just did it on
That's right.
format, right?
So I'm like, I'm keeping this review. So the
Yeah.
best, So I'm
Wow.
really proud of that work. It came out of a lot of difficulty that
Hmm.
led to me stopping touring for a long time, and that freed up my mind to just compose.
Wow. So
Yeah.
let's play the title track, which is Acceleration of Time. And we talked a little bit about that in the preview about how as you get older, time does go faster because a month when you're 12, when you're one, is 12th of your life. But when you're 70 or 80, I mean, it's just a small speck. And so the summers go faster, everything goes faster.
Yep.
So this is called Acceleration of Time. Wow. And that was Best Solo Piano Album of 2015 by One World Music Radio. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
great.
You know what I
Wow.
love
Very
about that
nice.
piece? I'll tell you what I
Yeah.
love about that piece. It's one of my favorite things. I
Yeah.
really struggled with that song because it's really rhythmic. To to
Mhm.
not to not. And this is before I named it. I was just like, man, I can't play this song and not speed it up.
Oh,
I'm like,
really?
it's like I'm playing it and I keep getting faster and faster and faster. I'm like, I can't keep my pace the same. And
Huh.
then when I came up with the name, The Acceleration of Time, I'm like, this is perfect. I'm glad I'm speeding up. This is great. It works.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Now, this next one is called In the Soft Light of Grace. And this is,
Yeah,
I believe, around somewhat around your mom
yeah.
passing. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Well, I went through I was going through and so many physical ailments, I think, due to stress.
Hmm.
And my mom's walked through cancer. There were a lot of other things going on with our family, with my business at that time.
Yeah.
And I just felt after winding down, which was this, for me, this monumental accomplishment.
Hmm.
It was just like after this album, which I put everything into, it was everything that I would hoped it would be. I felt like, how can I ever climb that mountain and do better?
Yeah.
How could I ever top that? And
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
became this block for me that
Hmm.
I couldn't write anything. I couldn't get anything going at the piano for a long time because of that, because I just, I didn't want to climb that mountain again and just feel like I don't know if I got it in me to do this with,
Yeah.
just everything it requires.
Hmm.
Um, but um, after during the time when my mom was in the hospital, she was in a coma for a long time.
Oh boy.
Um, and spending time in the hospital with her, I just this I made the decision, like this active decision. I mean, this is all through prayer. I mean, obviously, this is all through prayer. I just made the decision. You know what? I don't care about writing anything important or majestic or clever. I just need to be at the piano and I need to just play and just whatever happens, happens. And if it's simple, it's simple. And once I gave myself permission to like not have to write something epic and just
Hmm.
gave myself permission to just relax at the piano and just let it be a place of calm and rest and peace.
Hmm.
And it was like a little bubble of grace. Then the music started to flow, and all this music from this album, I think it's one of my best, and I think it's one of my most peaceful. But it all just came about really after as a result of kind of being broken down by life, honestly, just really broken,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
and then just stop striving and just um, try to find just the joy and just being at the piano. And
Hmm.
who cares what happens with this music? Just play.
So which track should I play on this, do you think?
Um, let's actually play In the Soft Light of Grace, the title
Yeah.
track.
Okay. Wow. Well, we've gone through a journey, and I know that you have two more albums you're planning to come out sometime in maybe next year, perhaps the year after. So that's
Yep.
exciting. That's really
Um,
exciting.
yeah, it has now been 5 years since I released In the Soft Light of Grace. And again, I'm like, am I done? Is this it? Um, but I really wanted to work on another album of hymns.
Hmm.
And so I took this time and I started working on some hymn arrangements. And so I'm recording this album of hymn arrangements. And as I'm recording this album of hymn arrangements, um, I also started writing a couple original pieces. I composed and arranged 7 more pieces, which
Nice.
was just like a flurry again after kind of a long drought. And so the way it looks right now is that next year, if all goes as I hope, in 2025, probably late 2025, I'll be releasing the album of hymn arrangements.
Nice.
And
Do you have a
then
name
that
title for it yet? Do you know?
I do, but I'm kind of saving it.
Okay.
And
Well,
then
this is a good, yeah,
and then
go ahead.
6 months later, I'll be releasing a new album of original music. So
Wonderful.
2 albums in 2 years is my hope.
Oh my God. Well, you've done so much already. The average mortal person would probably say, I'm done, but you keep going. I just love that. That's great. And it's funny because I'm an aspiring composer myself, but I've written just a handful of stuff compared to you. And it occurs to me when you say, I struggle for how to find the next thing. I'm struggling all the time. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, what you're doing is quite wonderful. And then, even though it's religiously inspired, you don't have to be a religious person to appreciate your music. It does have a beauty that transcends, any specific genre, if you will. It's just beautiful. I'm going to open up to the floor now and ask if people want to ask a couple of questions. And I may
Okay.
have to ask you to unmute. So I'm just going to go through the list here and ask people to unmute. But I believe you can unmute yourselves and feel free to ask a question.
Well, I'll ask one. You said you started in the key of C, and I've been an amateur composer when I was a kid. I chose C because it didn't have any sharps and flats, and it
Yeah.
had the white keys on the piano. And I've always been struggling to try to branch out to other keys. Did you ever leave the key of C?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was just 1 year that I spent with one teacher who insisted on my only playing music in the key of C because she felt like I needed to master that before I moved on to the key of
Mm.
G. Uh, but yeah, I did. I play in every key
Do you have a
now.
favorite key?
Um, I kind of do. I really
Hmm.
love G minor.
Oh, interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, the key of G minor is, I think, probably my favorite.
Hmm.
And
Why is that?
I think I like the mood.
Mm. Hmm.
I feel like G minor is just this really melancholy, kind of powerful, you can play, and I feel like there's some keys like the key of G minor, the key of D, the key of E flat. There's a few keys that I feel like I can almost play and do no wrong in.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable in those.
No, didn't know that.
It's
So,
naughty, Penny.
Did you ever have problems that you go off and you play a piece for a while, and then if you leave it, you you remember that there was such a piece, but you can't quite reconstruct it, and so it can be lost, or sometimes it can be on. But are some of the music sort of gone before you get it finished?
oh yeah, I mean, I actually, anytime I get a good idea, I record it on my phone um, to have. But what ends up happening is I end up recording every idea that I have. But the ones that I keep are the ones that I continue to play that I remember.
Mm.
And so I have all these unfinished pieces on my phone that I'll probably
Yeah.
never go back to because I never take the time to go back. So I
Yes.
get these ideas and then they stick with me. I come back to the piano and they stick with me. And I guess I just kind of feel like if I remember it, it's probably a worthy piece. And if I don't remember it, it probably shouldn't be remembered.
Mm. Interesting. That's an interesting philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever deliberately go outside the chord structure or the scale and try to find different, you know, um, chord changes that aren't expected or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I did that a lot on Winding Down. That was a big part of what I was doing is trying to just challenge myself and stretch myself.
Yeah.
But the process that I talked about before of walking away from the piano and composing in my head is when a
Yes.
lot of that's when a lot of that happens because if I'm at the piano, I'm always going to play what I would naturally play. But when
Right.
I go away from the piano, I'll hear something different and then I'll have to find it. And that's where
Yeah.
some of the more interesting things come from.
Excellent. Excellent. All right.
Sometimes when you
Yeah.
write a piece, I assume you write it, and then when at the time you're writing it, you may be in love with it, which is what happens with a new piece. And then a few days or a few weeks later, you come back to it and your view of it is not quite so sanguine as it was. Do you ever find yourself abandoning pieces that you had written, but then just lost interest in them because they didn't seem to be of the quality you hoped?
Yeah, sometimes I do, but it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. And sometimes it can be if it's a piece that I find exceptionally difficult to play, and no matter what I do, I can't quite seem to get it. And then what happens is that whenever I go back to work on that piece, I feel frustration.
Mm.
And instead of just enjoying the piece, I feel frustration. And it becomes this thing where I'm kind of shouting at the piano. And it's not a very conducive, environment for what I do. So there have been times where I've had pieces like that, and I'm just like, you know what? I want to set this down because right now I can't play this without feeling anxiety.
Mm.
So I may come back to it later and try it again or try a different approach, or
Mm.
I might not. And that does happen now and then.
Mm. It's amazing to hear you be a mere mortal when you've actually composed, literally hundreds of pieces, and you talk about the fact you actually struggle in some things. I just find that amazing because we think of prolific composers like you as just having easy peasy all the time, but clearly it's
No.
there's clearly ups and downs and struggles and all of that. But you've managed
Yeah.
to to come through with flying colors, and I just want to hand it to you for, to have these great albums behind you and as a legacy, and then continue to compose and all of that. Just you're quite an inspiration for me. I'm sure a lot of other people too. So I want to thank you for your time. We're going to archive this on the internet forever, so feel free to actually refer it if anytime you want. And I think it's a wonderful trajectory of your music over time, and captures a little bit of the essence of who you are. It's be hard to do that in an hour, but I really appreciate your time, David. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for listening, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Take care.
Thanks.